In the third year of our arranged marriage, my husband, mafia godfather Alessandro, paraded his new mistress in front of me. That woman was the reason my mother died, and Alessandro did nothing to stop her. When I called him in desperation, begging for help, he hung up on me to comfort that woman's tears. Later, he sent a diamond bracelet worth a small fortune, saying it was his way of making things right. He assured me that I would always be Mrs. Falcone, that no other woman could ever take my place. But my mother was gone. My heart was buried with her. So what meaning did Mrs. Falcone have anymore? After my mother's funeral, I pulled out the stack of transfer documents I had been preparing for months. It was past midnight when Alessandro finally staggered through the front door, smelling of whiskey and another woman's perfume. "Elena," he slurred. "Did you like the bracelet I sent?" His face still bore traces of lipstick. When he leaned in to kiss me, I resisted the urge to recoil. Instead, I handed him the papers. He squinted at them, then smirked. "More family paperwork? You've learned well. A perfect little consigliere in training." "Routine approvals," I replied quietly. "Just sign them." He sighed and scribbled his name across the pages without even glancing through most of them. But when he reached the last document, one related to the dockside warehouses, he paused. "This one looks different," he muttered. Before I could respond, his phone rang. Isabella's name flashed across the screen. "Alessandro." Her voice trembled through the speaker. "You promised to stay the night. Why are you with her again? Don't tell me you're pitying your wife now." Alessandro's expression softened instantly. Without another word, he scrawled his signature across the final page, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. Halfway out, he turned back with that same commanding tone he always used when he wanted to remind me of my place. "Elena, be more gracious toward her. Our marriage was arranged, but we're family now. Don't embarrass us in front of outsiders." And then he was gone. The door slammed shut, leaving only silence in the massive villa. I stared down at the signed papers, my hands trembling, my vision blurring through tears. 3 years ago to the day, I had met Alessandro for the first time. My family was drowning in debt, and my mother's only chance at survival was an experimental treatment that cost more than we could ever afford. The Falcones offered a deal, my hand in marriage in exchange for my mother's life. At first, Alessandro had been everything a woman could dream of: charming, attentive, intoxicatingly romantic. Even though our union was arranged, he had made it feel like a love story. He'd cancel meetings just to take me to private art galleries. He remembered my favorite tea, my favorite flowers, even the colors I preferred to wear. He filled an entire garden with roses simply because I once said I loved them. When my mother's condition suddenly worsened, he had moved heaven and earth to save her. He called in the best doctors from Europe, commandeered half the hospitals in New York, and never left my side. His arm was still bleeding from a recent gang fight, but he held me close and swore, "Elena, stay with me. I'll make you the most respected woman in this city. You'll be my only love, always." I had believed him, but the illusion shattered soon after the wedding. He began staying out late, coming home reeking of perfume. When I confronted him, he drowned my anger with diamonds and apologies. When I threatened to leave with my mother, he coldly reminded me who controlled her medical treatment. Every promise he'd made turned into another chain around my neck. Eventually, he stopped pretending altogether. He gave me a limitless black card and said in that calm, patronizing voice, "Elena, I do love you, but a man like me can't belong to just one woman. You're my wife, my family's matriarch. The rest are just for fun." For 3 long years, I watched one mistress replace another, except Isabella. She lasted longer than the rest, and for her, Alessandro broke every rule he had ever set. By the time my mother died, whatever warmth had been left in me was gone. I didn't need to endure him anymore. Once the 30-day asset transfer went through, Alessandro Falcone would lose far more than a wife. He could have his women and his hollow empire. I was taking back my freedom. Over 10 days passed without a single word from Alessandro. I remained in the villa, going through my mother's belongings, arranging her ashes at the church columbarium. Meanwhile, he was in Miami, indulging in shopping sprees, late-night drinks, and sunrises with Isabella. Not once had he sent me a message. Isabella, on the other hand, made sure I knew exactly where I stood. Using a new number every day, she sent photos of herself with Alessandro, flaunting their closeness and gloating over his attention. All the care and affection I had once longed for, he now lavished on her. After blocking her number for the 17th time, Alessandro finally returned home. He strolled in casually, holding a bouquet of slightly wilted roses, as if he had been away on a brief business trip. "Elena, I'm exhausted. Tell the kitchen to make me something to eat," he said, completely indifferent to the perfume clinging to his clothes or the fresh hickey on his neck. When I didn't respond immediately, he frowned. "Still upset about Isabella?" "It was just a childish prank," he continued. "I had to comfort her." "You're overreacting." He waved his hand dismissively, adding, "I replaced the flowers for you, and we'll have someone replant the rose garden. And as for your mother, I've arranged for the best sanatorium in Switzerland. You don't need to worry." Grief struck sharply. Over half a month had passed, and he still didn't know, or perhaps didn't care, that my mother had died. He lied to me so clumsily, trying to smooth over my pain. I forced myself to suppress the ache in my chest, staring at him silently. His head was bent, fingers flying over his phone as he texted Isabella, that same gentle smile on his lips. 3 years. Had he already forgotten everything? Tears slipped down my cheeks despite myself. Alessandro glanced up, startled by my expression, and tried to console me. "Don't cry, Elena. I'll spend more time at home with you, I promise." But his words barely left his mouth before his phone rang again. "Don Falcone, the banquet is starting. Miss Isabella is waiting for you." It was his consigliere, Marco, calling. Alessandro glanced at me, a flicker of hesitation crossing his features, but he quickly masked it. "All right, Elena. I said I'd stay with you, and I won't go back on my word. We'll go together. Get out and clear your head." Before I could object, he practically dragged me into the car. The moment I opened the door, I noticed a small earring, belonging to another woman, lying on the seat. Alessandro, looking momentarily flustered, tossed it out the window. "She's just a kid. She doesn't know any better. You need to be more understanding," he murmured. I didn't rise to the bait. Instead, I calmly took a wet wipe and meticulously cleaned the leather seat. Alessandro froze, instinctively leaning forward to cover a photo of him and Isabella plastered on the dashboard. Tentatively, he asked, "You're not angry?" "There's nothing to be angry about," I said, turning my gaze indifferently toward the window. He didn't understand. The moment his pen touched those documents, he had ceased being my husband. He was a stranger, a target, not even worth my wrath anymore. The drive continued in silence. Alessandro opened his mouth several times, but never found the right words. Ever since he had applied the twisted rules of his mafia code to our marriage, we had lost the ability to converse normally. All that remained were arguments, resentment, and exhaustion. By now, my mother's death had drained every last ounce of strength from me. I simply wanted to endure the remaining days and escape this marriage intact. When we arrived at the banquet, a crowd swarmed us immediately. I was shoved aside, my lower back slamming into the sharp edge of the bar. Pain radiated through me, making it hard to stand. Isabella appeared, gliding toward us in a seductive red gown. "Alessandro, today is our 6-month anniversary," she purred. "I don't want gifts. I just want to borrow your mother's sapphire necklace just for a little while, so I can pretend, just for a moment, that I'm your wife." Her performance was flawless, charming, sincere. Even the assembled family members seemed to be swept along. Alessandro stepped forward, pulling her into his arms. "I promise," he said. The media, already waiting, flashed cameras, capturing him fastening the necklace around her neck. I lowered my eyes, a bitter smile touching my lips. When we were married, Alessandro had promised a simple ceremony. I had asked for only one thing, a glimpse of the matriarch's necklace. He had postponed it endlessly. That later stretched into 3 long years. And now, as I watched him adorn another woman with it, I realized the truth. Alessandro had never changed. He had never respected me. The love I had believed in had been nothing more than a game for a mafia godfather. A voice suddenly interrupted my thoughts. "Don Falcone, you and your wife make such a striking pair. You look like newlyweds, even after all these years." Alessandro, murmuring closely with Isabella, frowned as the comment cut through the crowd. His eyes flicked toward me. "You've got it wrong," he said firmly. "This is my wife, Elena Falcone." Immediately, the noisy chatter fell silent. Whispers rippled through the crowd, a mix of pity and morbid curiosity. Imagine the patience it takes to just stand there and watch him with another woman. I remember when Don Falcone almost gave up his position for her. And now, how did it come to this? I smiled faintly, self-deprecating, and said nothing. There was no reason to ask why. The new had replaced the old. In this world, there were no fairy tales of bad boys turning good, only lies and betrayal. Amid the murmurs, I looked at Alessandro with detached clarity. The necklace suits her well. If you like it that much, hang the photo you just took in our bedroom. Once, I had wanted that spot to hold our wedding portrait. But now, my mother was gone, and the villa was ready for its new mistress. Alessandro hesitated, about to follow me, but Isabella clung to him tightly. Alessandro, you promised me. He paused, then chose her over me. Perhaps feeling guilty, he sent me a text as he comforted her. I'll come home once she's calmed down. Be good. Have the kitchen prepare risotto and wait for me. The word risotto sent a pang through me. It was a dish from my hometown, one my mother had taught me to cook. Even Alessandro had once praised it. A pity he would never taste it again. That night, burdened by grief, I went to the church to pray for my mother. On the way home, a group of street thugs emerged from the shadows. This is just a lesson. Don't be ungrateful. One hissed. I fought back fiercely, but in the chaos, Isabella appeared from nowhere, shoving me toward the edge of the pier. We both plunged into the icy water. Before I could react, a dark figure shot into the sea, Alessandro. Instinctively, I reached for him, but he swam past me, saving Isabella instead. Elena, I know you can swim, and I saw you push her. Stop pretending to be jealous, he snapped. Get out yourself and apologize to Isabella, or stay there and think about what you've done. I'm done spoiling you. All his focus was on a trembling Isabella. He didn't see the cuts along my arms, or the blood clouding the water. He didn't see the injury in my leg, slowing my movements, dragging me down. When I failed to obey, his patience finally snapped. He scooped Isabella into his arms and left, ignoring my desperate cries. But he didn't know the attack had left me seriously wounded. The water was freezing, and after a few frantic struggles, my strength gave out. Before losing consciousness, I glimpsed a tall figure plunging into the waves, moving swiftly toward me. When I awoke, a kind, handsome face hovered over me. You're awake. You've been out for days. You gave me quite a scare, he said gently. I won't hurt you. My name is Dante. I was passing by and pulled you out. I thanked him and offered a check, which he raised an eyebrow at but refused to take. With no other family or friends, Dante cared for me at the hospital for several days. On the 27th day of the asset transfer period, I was finally discharged. Weak and fragile, I rested in a chair while Dante handled the paperwork. When he stepped out, I saw Alessandro and Isabella. The transfer period was ending, and I wanted no more conflict. But Alessandro seized my arm and slapped me across the face in front of everyone. Elena, how shameless can you be? I'm gone for days, and already you're seducing other men. I froze. He didn't ask how I was or why I had been in the hospital. He assumed, condemned, and threatened, based on nothing but a glance. His so-called family traditions only applied to him. Isabella linked her arm with his smugly. Don't be angry, Alessandro. Elena probably just wanted your attention, she cooed. I don't blame her for the pier incident. You shouldn't get upset and risk your health. You've been working so hard taking care of me. Her words only fueled his fury. Apologize to Isabella. Then get home and explain yourself about that pretty boy. From now on, you will not leave without my permission. I remained silent. His anger spiked further. I said apologize. If you don't, I'll stop your mother's treatment right now. That was Alessandro, knowing exactly where to strike. But I had nothing left to lose. My mother was gone. His threats held no power. I shrugged off his hand, ignored his rage, and walked away. Back at the villa, I packed my remaining belongings and blocked all contact with him, silently waiting for the end of this marriage. On the 28th day, he sent a single rose petal encrusted with diamonds. On the 29th, a ruby jewelry set worth millions. I confirmed with my lawyer that the gifts were legally mine, then locked them in my private vault along with everything else he had given me. On the 30th day, Alessandro returned. He tried to embrace me, a guilty look on his face. Elena, I was wrong. I misunderstood the situation, but I acted out of love. Tomorrow, the Swiss specialists arrive. They'll save your mother. When she recovers, we'll take a trip around the world. My way of making it up to you. It was too late. I stepped aside calmly. No need. It's all in the past. Alessandro stared at me for a long moment. Seeing my unshakable composure, he relaxed slightly. He stayed with me until evening, but eventually left for Isabella, offering a flimsy excuse. Before he drove off, he glanced back. I'll be back early. Tomorrow we'll get the specialists for your mother together. I watched him go. When his car disappeared, I picked up my suitcase and stepped into the night. All that remained was a completed asset transfer and a gift for Isabella. Alessandro was at a high-end club with Isabella. The woman in his arms was a picture of coquettish charm, but for the first time, he felt a profound emptiness. Elena's unnervingly calm eyes when he left had filled him with a strong sense of unease. Over the years, they had argued, they had fought, and once he had even trashed the entire house in a rage. But Elena had always been there when the smoke cleared, waiting, enduring, forgiving. Her anger had been proof that she still cared, that somewhere beneath the damage, something remained. But tonight, there had been nothing. No tears. No pleading. Just that hollow acceptance in her gaze, as if she were looking at a stranger. Alessandro, are you even listening? Isabella pouted, running her fingers along his collar. I said I want to go to Paris next week. You promised we'd. Not now, he muttered, downing his whiskey in one gulp. Isabella's expression soured. You've been distracted all night. Is this about her again? When are you going to stop treating me like a mistress and Elena like some kind of saint? Alessandro's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Marco burst through the club's private entrance, his face pale. Don Falcone, we have a problem. Alessandro stood immediately, sensing the urgency. What is it? It's the warehouses. All 7 of them. The transfers went through this morning. They're no longer in your name. Marco's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Neither are the offshore accounts, the diamond mine shares, or the property holdings in Manhattan and Sicily. The room seemed to tilt. What the hell are you talking about? Marco handed him a tablet. Alessandro's eyes scanned the legal documents, his face draining of color with each line. Transfers. Signatures. His signatures. All dated exactly 30 days ago. The night Elena had handed him those papers. No, he whispered. No, she wouldn't. But even as he said it, he knew. Elena's quiet composure over the past month. Her lack of resistance. The way she'd stopped fighting him entirely. She hadn't given up. She'd been counting down. Sir, there's more. Marco hesitated. Mrs. Falcone withdrew from the villa this evening. The staff said she took only personal belongings. She's gone. Alessandro's phone was already in his hand, dialing Elena's number. It went straight to voicemail. He tried again.
And again. Blocked.
For the first time in his life, Alessandro Falcone felt genuine fear. Isabella grabbed his arm. Alessandro, what's happening? Where are you going? He shook her off without a word and ran for the exit, leaving her standing alone in the club, the sapphire necklace glittering coldly around her neck. With the assets I had transferred, I bought a beachfront villa on the West Coast. A love that once felt spectacular had devolved into a transactional mess of cash and heartache. Fortunately, the money was enough for me to live out the rest of my life in peace. On the day I moved in, I unexpectedly ran into Dante. He came forward and took my heavy suitcase. What a coincidence. You live here too? I'm right next door. I kept hearing a beautiful woman was moving in, but I never imagined it would be you. I hadn't expected to see him here either, and I was both surprised and happy. Remembering how I'd left the hospital without a word, I explained myself, a little embarrassed. After listening, he cursed bastard under his breath, then looked at me with a serious expression. You'll have my protection from now on. If your ex-husband ever dares to harass you again, just tell me. I'll make sure he doesn't get away with it. Thank you. I looked up at Dante, genuinely grateful for the kindness of this stranger who had become an unexpected anchor in my storm. Over the following weeks, Dante and I fell into an easy rhythm. He'd bring me coffee in the mornings when he noticed I was up early, watching the sunrise. We'd take walks along the beach, talking about everything except my past. He never pried, never pushed. He simply existed beside me, steady, warm, uncomplicated. For the first time in 3 years, I could breathe. I began painting again, something I'd abandoned after marrying Alessandro. The villa's sun-drenched studio became my sanctuary. Dante would sometimes sit quietly in the corner, reading, while I lost myself in colors and brushstrokes. You're good at this, he said one afternoon, studying a seascape I'd just finished. Why did you stop? Someone told me it was a waste of time, I said softly. That I had more important duties as his wife. Dante's expression darkened. He was wrong. One evening, about 3 weeks after I'd moved in, Dante invited me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant by the pier. The owner knew him by name, and the warmth of the place, the laughter, the music, the simple joy, made me realize how cold my life had been. Elena, Dante said over dessert, his expression serious. I know you're still healing, and I'm not asking for anything, but I want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd like to be more than just your neighbor. My heart fluttered with something I thought I'd lost forever: hope. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Elena. Alessandro's voice was ragged, desperate. Please, just tell me where you are. We need to talk. I hung up without a word and blocked the number. But Alessandro Falcone had never been one to give up easily. 2 days later, he found me. I was unlocking my villa's gate when a black SUV screeched to a halt in front of my driveway. Alessandro stumbled out, looking like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot, his usually immaculate hair disheveled. Elena, thank God. He approached me, hands outstretched. I've been looking everywhere for you. I stepped back instinctively. How did you find me? Does it matter? His voice cracked. Elena, please just come home. We can fix this. I'll do whatever you want. I'll send Isabella away. I'll change. I'll... Stop. My voice was ice. There's nothing to fix, Alessandro. We're done. You don't mean that. He moved closer, desperation bleeding into anger. You're my wife. You can't just steal my assets and disappear. I didn't steal anything. You signed every document yourself. You were just too distracted by your mistress to read them. His face twisted. You tricked me. I gave you a choice, I said quietly. Every single time you chose her, you were choosing this ending. That's when Dante appeared, having heard the commotion. He positioned himself between Alessandro and me, his presence commanding. I think the lady asked you to leave. Alessandro's eyes narrowed as recognition dawned.
You.
You're the one from the hospital. Alessandro's face was a mask of disbelief. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, stunned for a long moment before he could react. You're a woman? She's my wife. With that, the two men began to fight. Alessandro, softened by years of debauchery, was no match for Dante. Dante, clearly in his prime, knocked him to the ground in a matter of seconds. I looked at Dante's scraped knuckles, and a pang of concern shot through me as I took out a bandage for his hand. Humiliated, Alessandro stared at me, his eyes blazing with denial as he roared almost hysterically. How are you two so close? When did this start? Elena, you were cheating on me all along? After everything I've given you? How could you do this to me? Before I could speak, Dante answered for me. He looked down at Alessandro on the ground, a mocking smile on his face. Watch your mouth, Don Falcone.
Cheating?
Don't you have a family tradition? Besides, Dante continued, his voice dropping dangerously. I met Elena after you abandoned her in the water and left her to drown. So, if anyone has a right to be self-righteous, it certainly isn't you. Alessandro flinched as if struck. I didn't. She could swim, I thought. You thought wrong, I said, finally finding my voice. The words came out steadier than I expected. I nearly died that night, Alessandro. I was in the hospital for days. You never came. You never called. You didn't even notice I was gone. Because you blocked me, he protested. I blocked you after I was discharged. You had nearly 2 weeks to care and you didn't. I shook my head, exhausted by the circular argument. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm not your wife. The divorce papers were included in the documents you signed. We've been legally separated for over 3 weeks now. The color drained from Alessandro's face.
No.
No, that's not. I wouldn't have signed. You did. Page 37. Your lawyer has the copies. Alessandro stumbled backward, looking genuinely shattered. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Elena, please, he whispered. I love you. I know I've been terrible, but I can change. Just give me another chance. Come home. That was never my home, I said quietly. It was a prison with golden bars. I'll make Isabella leave. I'll do anything. It's not about Isabella anymore, Alessandro. It's about you. Who you are. What you've become. I paused, letting the words settle. You killed my mother. Maybe not with your own hands, but through your negligence, your cruelty, your choice to comfort your mistress instead of protecting my family. That's not something you can fix with apologies or diamonds. Dante gently touched my arm. Elena, let's go inside. He's not worth your energy. Alessandro's eyes flickered to Dante's hand on my arm, and something dangerous flashed across his face. You think you've won, he said, his voice low and venomous. You think you can just walk away from me? From the Falcone family? I'll destroy you. I'll take everything back. You'll regret. Alessandro. My voice cut through his threats like a blade. I'd be very careful about making threats right now. You see, over the past 30 days, I've been doing more than just transferring assets. His eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I've been gathering evidence. About Isabella. About her connections to the Rossi family. About how she's been feeding them information for months. I watched his face carefully. How she orchestrated my mother's death to clear her path to becoming the next Mrs. Falcone. Alessandro went very still. What? Check your email, I said simply. I sent everything to your consigliere an hour ago. I suspect by now, your entire family knows exactly what kind of woman you've been protecting. Alessandro's phone buzzed insistently. He pulled it out with shaking hands, and I watched the realization wash over his face as he scrolled through message after message from Marco, from his father, from the Capos. His empire was crumbling, and for once, it had nothing to do with rival families or business deals. It was all because of his choices. Elena. His voice was barely a whisper now. Why would you, after everything? Why would you help me? I'm not helping you, I corrected. I'm helping the family understand what kind of threat Isabella poses. What you do with that information is your problem, not mine. Without another word, I turned and walked into my villa with Dante, leaving Alessandro standing alone in the driveway, his world falling apart around him. Through the window, I watched him make a call, then speed away in his SUV.
Dante stood beside me.
He'll go after Isabella now. I know. You could have just walked away. You didn't know his family, anything. I was silent for a moment, watching the sun set over the ocean. My mother used to say that revenge is a poison that destroys the vessel that carries it. But justice is just setting the scales right. Dante smiled softly. Remind me never to cross you. For the first time in what felt like forever, I laughed. With Dante's help, I anonymously sent the evidence of Isabella colluding with a rival to overthrow the Falcone family to all the family's capos and to Alessandro. This included the details of how she had engineered my mother's death. In his father's study, in front of all the core family members, Alessandro confronted Isabella. Faced with a mountain of irrefutable proof, Isabella panicked instantly. She looked at Alessandro, her face streaked with tears. Alessandro, say something?
You were with me.
I didn't mean to, I just loved you too much. Before she could finish, Alessandro lunged forward and slapped her hard across her beautiful face. His eyes were bloodshot as he practically screamed. It was all you. You made me lose Elena. If you hadn't killed her mother, she never would have left me. This is all your fault. Isabella was stunned by the slap, her hand flying to her reddening cheek. The sapphire necklace, the Falcone family heirloom, glittered mockingly at her throat. Alessandro, please, she sobbed. I did it for us. For our future. She was in the way. She would never have let you go. Silence. The voice came from the head of the table. Don Falcone Sr., Alessandro's father, stood slowly. Even at 70, he commanded absolute authority. His cold gaze fixed on Isabella. Remove the necklace. You've disgraced it. Isabella's hands trembled as she unclasped it, the sapphires catching the light one last time before Alessandro snatched them away. Marco, the elder Falcone said calmly, take her to the warehouse. Let the Rossi family know we've discovered their little spy. I'm sure they'll be very interested in negotiating her return. No, Isabella screamed as two guards seized her arms. Alessandro, you can't let them do this. You love me, you said. Get her out of my sight, Alessandro said, his voice hollow. As Isabella was dragged away, her screams echoing through the mansion, Don Falcone Sr. turned to his son. You've been a fool, Alessandro. That girl was your wife, your partner, and you treated her like an accessory. The old man's disappointment was palpable. Elena came from nothing, yet she conducted herself with more dignity and intelligence than you've shown in years. She outmaneuvered you completely, and you deserved it. Alessandro said nothing, staring at the sapphire necklace in his hands. You have 1 week to clean up this mess with the Rossis, his father continued. And when you're done, I suggest you think very carefully about the kind of man you want to be. Because right now, you're not worthy of the Falcone name. 3 months later, I stood in my studio, adding final touches to a painting of my mother. I'd captured her as I remembered her best, laughing, vibrant, full of life. It would hang in the church where her ashes rested, a memorial befitting the woman who taught me strength. The doorbell rang, and I found Dante on my porch, holding a bouquet of white roses, my favorite, though I never told him. How did you know? I asked, taking them with a smile. I pay attention, he said simply. Unlike some people. I laughed, inviting him in. Over the past months, Dante had become my closest friend, my confidant, and something more, something I was finally ready to explore. We were having coffee on the terrace when another car pulled up. My heart sank as I recognized it. Alessandro emerged, looking thinner, more haggard. But there was something different in his eyes. Not desperation this time, but resignation. Dante tensed beside me, but I placed a hand on his arm. It's okay. Alessandro stopped at a respectful distance, not approaching the terrace. He held a small wooden box. I'm not here to beg, he said quietly, or to ask for anything. I just came to return this. He opened the box. Inside was my mother's wedding ring, the one I'd thought lost forever, the one she'd been wearing when she died. My breath caught. Isabella had it, Alessandro explained, his voice rough. She'd taken it as some kind of trophy. I found it in her things. He set the box on the garden wall between us. It belongs to you. I walked over slowly and picked up the ring, tears blurring my vision. Thank you, Elena. Alessandro's voice cracked. I can't undo what I've done. I can't bring your mother back or erase the pain I caused you. But I want you to know that I finally understand what I lost. Not the assets, not the properties, you. The only woman who ever truly saw me and loved me anyway. He took a shaky breath. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For all of it. And that you were right to leave. I looked at this broken man who'd once held my heart and felt only a distant sadness. I forgive you, Alessandro, I said softly. Not for you. For me. So I can move forward without carrying that weight. Something flickered in his eyes. Gratitude, perhaps, or grief. Be happy, Elena, he said. That's all I want now. He nodded once to Dante, a gesture of acknowledgement, maybe even respect, and returned to his car. I watched him drive away, feeling the final thread of our connection snap cleanly. Dante came to stand beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Are you okay? I looked down at my mother's ring, then out at the ocean stretching endlessly before us. Yes, I said, meaning it completely. I really am. For the first time since I could remember, the future looked bright. The past was behind me, paid for, accounted for, released. And ahead lay possibility, freedom, and maybe, just maybe, a love that wouldn't require me to lose myself to keep it. I slipped my mother's ring onto my right hand, where it belonged, and turned to Dante with a genuine smile. Now, I said, tell me more about those painting classes you mentioned. I think it's time I started living again. Dante grinned, and together we walked back into the villa, into the light, into a new chapter that was entirely my own.
Epilogue.
1 year later, my art exhibition opened in a prestigious Manhattan gallery. The collection was titled Resurrection, pieces documenting the journey from darkness to light, from captivity to freedom. Dante stood beside me at the opening, his hand warm in mine. We'd taken things slowly, but what had grown between us was genuine, built on friendship and mutual respect rather than desperation and obligation. Among the attendees, I spotted Alessandro near the back of the gallery. He stood alone, studying a particular painting, one I titled The Prison of Roses. It depicted a woman behind bars made of flowers, gold, and jewels. Our eyes met across the room. He raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement, a ghost of his old smile on his lips, then turned and left without approaching. I heard later that he donated a substantial sum to the women's shelter I'd established in my mother's name.
It was his way of making amends, I supposed.
Some wounds he could never heal, but at least he was trying to prevent others from suffering the same fate. Isabella, I learned, had been traded back to the Rossi family in a negotiation that ended their conflict with the Falcones. What happened to her after that, I didn't know and didn't care to find out. She was no longer part of my story. Ready to give your speech? Dante asked, squeezing my hand. I looked around the gallery, at the art I'd created from my pain, at the people who'd come to support me, at the life I'd built from ashes. Yes, I said, kissing him softly. I'm ready. As I walked to the podium, I felt my mother's ring on my finger, a constant reminder of where I'd come from and the strength she'd given me. And I knew wherever she was proud. I had survived. More than that, I had flourished. And this was only the beginning.